Thank you for joining us for another week of Take Two, another busy week as always. Maura Carabello is here, Greg Hughes. And Maura, we want to thank you because this is your last official week before Jim DeBackus comes back, but we're hoping you come back with us because we love talking and having great conversations.
Certainly, it's been fun.
Yeah.
I'm so sad. I hope this doesn't ruin your street cred, but it's been so much fun not having Jim here. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just can't believe it. You know.
I know, but let's not get too nice because we want to have some good discussions here for just a minute. So here we go. First, we have to recognize this is a weird day. Mother Nature really is not being nice. We have homes that burned down overnight in Bountiful. We've got firefighters out there doing a great job. And I know many people like me and others in the state here are watching their families in Florida right now as we have this hurricane that's coming up the coast. So a lot to talk about in the news world and a lot in politics as always. So this shouldn't be political, but I'm going to make it. U of U versus BYU. I'm sorry, Greg, but your team really sucks.
You know what? When you're young and you have a team, hope springs eternal.
Yeah.
You just always, there's always next year. I'm too old for this, okay? These games have been closed before.
You're clinging to your Heisman Trophy winner?
BYU gifts the University of Utah at least 14 points every time they meet through pick sixes and,
And I haven't even asked Maura where she falls, but probably not on your team.
I cannot stand giving them points. It's bad enough they win, but if you gift it to them, it makes it harder.
All right, they got to pull it together.
The U was even only playing at half speed, and they were still doing
You know what?
That must be hard. But the 80s were great, Greg. The 80s were terrific.
90s were bad either. I'll just let you know. 90s were bad.
So my only major comment here is that tonight, the best quarterback in the state of Utah is playing. Jordan Love is going to go on the field with Wake Forest. They're out of town. But Utah State University's quarterback is in the Huntsman run for the Heisman. He's not going to get it because they're in a conference. I get all that
politics.
stuff. And I know that. But I tell you, if you want to see good football in the state of Utah, watch Jordan Love play with Utah State.
She gets excited about those teams.
So how do you know Jordan Love? Tell us what you know.
Said the Steelers fan.
Are you just a Utah State fan in general?
Utah State fan. Jordan Love is terrific.
He is awesome.
And Utah State's always off the radar, right? And we're never paying attention. So I just say at the end of rivalry week, they're playing great football.
Contest, wasn't it?
That's good.
I don't understand.
You really do need to
I'm
go
going to need you to understand football better than that. But you're a BYU fan, and I get that.
I
get
Utah
it. It's
State,
about
actually.
the
More
uniforms.
than I like Utah, I like
You should
Utah
go
State.
check them out. I went to a game last year because my daughter's an Aggie now.
Yes.
And it was awesome. I went to the
terrific
game
team.
and I was like, this is fun
Yeah,
stuff.
you know what? Logan's the biggest small town in America. It is a great
team.
town.
Yeah.
I love going up there.
Yeah.
I do. I love the school. I actually do.
I'll be back. Parents weekend again. Kids love having
nice.
their parents at school.
Go Aggies.
That's what I tell myself.
Yeah.
All right. The inland port, there was a little movement this week. There was an agreement for the Salt Lake City mayor and the council. Maura, when you look at this, does this mean anything? Does this mean a step forward, or is it just a little something?
So part of me, I want to unpack this a little bit because I think we're conflating the land use policy with Salt Lake City a little with the inland port.
Okay.
Both of them are in the same area. That's really important. But if I'm watching, particularly if I'm watching from an environmental protection point of view, I think you really need to separate Salt Lake City from the Port Authority. And two things are going on. And so the Salt Lake City has land use planning. They do entitlements. They do jurisdictions. Port Authority actually can't do land use planning. So this week what happened was Salt Lake City had offered an agreement 2-3 years ago to a series of developers.
Yeah.
It's a pretty aggressive agreement. I'm one of those that wants to see more protection and less given to developers. And that's what Salt Lake City was grappling with this week. And we keep saying inland port is a generic. So Salt Lake City is still the land use planner for that area. Port Authority is the people now in charge of a controversial tax increment that we still have some discussions about. The state came in and took this tax increment, and that's the nature of the lawsuit. But they're three different things. Salt Lake City is doing, and so this week, there's a robust conversation to be had. I think there's some accountability to be asked for on the part of the city that offered these developers a pretty good deal here, and people should be concerned and want to watch that. People who also want to talk about what's the Port Authority going to do how are they going to use their tax increment to reflect the values that I have. In my case, I'm watching for the environment. And in between that is the argument that the city and state are having about how much money and some jurisdictional issues.
So is the city selling out in part our marshes and our wildlands and our birds and everything that needs to be protected in that area?
All I would say is I want the city to be a little tougher on developers that are doing light and moderate industrial. I mean, I do think that right now the current agreement, in my mind, challenge that the council has, it's already panned. So this is a little bit of a post conversation. I really want to give the council a pass in saying I don't know what they could do at this point.
Yeah.
But I will say the agreement that was penned by the administration a couple of years ago, from my point of view, gives too much to the developer.
Can I assume that you're excited about what the city did and we don't care about birds?
No, I'm glad to hear Maura describe that the way she did, because I think that it's been lost with the public that I keep hearing this discussion that the city opposes an inland port. It is absolutely the case that this development agreement and reimbursement agreement, these were signed documents, articulated in terms of what those reimbursements would look like, what areas would be developed for the purpose of an inland port. It was done right before we saw the legislation for the inland port on the state level. But if you fast forward to today, you would think that the city opposes the inland port and is litigating against the effort for an inland port. These agreements and these reimbursement agreements, which are very, very generous, more so than I think even the Inland Port Board would ever feel comfortable with, these predate the inland port itself, which means that your Salt Lake City council, mayor, city, its government, was not only supportive of an inland port, but had come to these development agreements and reimbursement agreements of tax increment to those developers to develop in that area before this legislation in the state had passed. And so when you hear the state or the city talk about we don't want an inland port, they actually do. And I tried to show these documents to some reporters to say, hey, I'm hearing a narrative that doesn't match the documents that have been signed and the work being done with developers in that area. The city does expect to develop this area. They do want to see an inland port over there. Look at these agreements, but I don't know, maybe it's too complicated.
So what created the regret? Because it seems like those agreements and there were things going on, and then when the deal was sealed, as the kids would say 10 years ago, #regret. What made the regret happen where the city was
on the city side?
Yeah, where the city's like, well, we're not fully on board because...
So I think that like that hearing where they had to give the actual increment and reimburse back, that's just fulfilling what you agreed to long ago. In between, when you sign those documents to when you have to send the money to the developers, they got caught up in the legislation in terms of not wanting this inland port to have this effort, and I think they just got carried away in terms of a narrative that isn't really consistent with what their decisions have been made in the past. I don't think they regret it. I just think it's coming home to roost that the city has always seen that area as an area to develop, enhance, create as an inland port. And all the state ever said in its legislation is, being an inland port with U.S. customs and trade is not a city function as much as it can be helped.
So the state made a power play, and the state needs to be held accountable for that. But you hold the city still is accountable for land use planning.
Yeah.
The Port Authority still needs to show us that they're going to use the tax increment in some ways to help our clean air and to help mitigate the environmental concerns we have.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's a lot of entities for us as citizens to look at differently. Don't let them fool you to say these people are completely responsible, these people. It's both Salt Lake City who's paying attention.
Yeah.
The council has been good stewards of this issue. They're the ones who stepped up and brokered the agreement with the state.
Yes,
the state did a major power play. They got, I know you'll say there are reasons.
Did you feel powerful when you did it?
So,
I mean,
look, a U.S. Customs International Inland Port, and we're seeing this, doesn't have to just be west of the airport. This inland port's looking at areas or a system that can be in Uinta Basin. It can be in Twilla. It can be in Ogden. It's
so
broader
the hub
than
and spoke
one
bit we're talking about. Okay.
Yes, so it could be larger than one jurisdiction. That's why you don't want a single jurisdiction to take all of that international trade on its shoulders alone. So it's a better model. It's one that's going to see, I think, a more successful system put in place because it's not confined to just one geographic area, which should make those that are worried about the airshed and the environmental concerns happy that we're finding a way to divert and to have some of this commerce or this trade go on in other parts of the state.
All right.
Great idea, but I think that this hearing showed that the city's always been supportive of an inland port activity in that area.
They showed their cards.
They'll appreciate that.
All right, we've got a lot of people, it sounds like, that have to be held accountable instead of, I think we do talk about the inland port as if it's this big bubble, yes, and it's not. There are different pieces. All right, this was interesting this week. The AG's office released some videos. They're online. Schools can use them. Parents can use them for firearm safety. Greg, is this going to help? I think they're hoping to help with accidental shootings, possibly suicides. And they say if guns are going to be in homes, we should educate people. Is this going to help keep kids safe, keep families safe?
Absolutely. Look,
How
you
and
can't
why?
on one hand say we need more sex education to familiarize everyone with the dangers
Oh,
of
and we're
or the
going to talk
risks
about that
involved.
in a minute,
Yes.
too.
I kind of saw that, but I'm saying you can't be all in here and then say we don't need to know anything about these guns. Why would we ever educate anyone on this front? It's the same. You could say it's in the same vein. Unfortunately and tragically, gun violence comes, I even say by a larger percentage because of suicides and things like that, and self-inflicted wounds. So we absolutely need to make sure that if you have guns in the home, you're storing them in a safe way and you're keeping them away from youth or children or those where an accident could occur where someone would look to harm themselves. Information's good. Good information drives good decisions. Why would we ever think that gun safety and teaching people good and best practices would be a bad thing? We should do it as much as possible.
What about teaching? Either of you can answer. Is it good to let your kids know there's a gun in the house, how to use it, how to keep safe? Or does it open the narrative to your child knowing there's a gun there, and then when they're depressed or they're not feeling good or their friends are over, they want to show them?
Information's always good.
Yeah.
Kids can handle it. Age-appropriate information. Information is power. It's how it's presented. It's who it's presented. I don't think anyone should be opposed to telling people and teaching people more about guns. But what I don't want to get lost in the discussion is, one, the reason we have to is our prolific nation and our love of guns, which I do still object to. The other thing is, I think this is a separate and does nothing for the issue of suicide, mass shootings, and the proliferation of violence in our community. So this is about kids understanding when they see a gun, how to use it correctly. This is not significant movement
So
on
it's a
talking
baby
about
step.
suicide. It's not significant movement in talking about shootings and violence. They are categorically different. This is a nice safety measure. This is a nice how to use the weapon. This is a nice when you're walking home from school and you see a gun, don't touch it, call a parent. It's important education, but it does not touch on the subjects that we need to discuss as a nation about proliferation, shootings at schools, massive violence, the fear that kids are feeling about those issues are very different than understanding how to use a gun, understanding how to stay safe around weapons. These are gun safety, and I'm for the gun safety. I just don't want them to be a red herring for saying, oh, look, we are
That we're doing
really
something.
doing this. We're not doing
So maybe
things
this
about
is season
suicide.
1, and we can come out with a season 2 and a season 3 and a season 4
We
of
do
other
like
steps
to take
in
the
gun
slow
education.
and steady approach to most preventative things as we shall talk
I haven't
about.
seen the curriculum, but I would hope one of the things in that curriculum is a safe storage of your firearms and guns, which I would hope would impact suicides, at least teen suicides. I mean, young people's access to guns, we can do better. We can make sure that we have them in safe and secure areas where those that we don't intend to use them or have them won't. And I think that should be part of the safety curriculum.
So that's a lot of adult education, and I
Yeah.
hope that you would also encourage, because this is a student-based education level,
Yeah.
and by definition, they're probably not the gun owner.
Yeah.
So I am told that by definition, until you commit a crime, all gun owners are safe and secure, and I like that you appreciate that not all of them are responsible gun owners.
Well,
And
I just think you can always
say,
add
yeah,
information
we
to that. I
absolutely
think
need to
there's
tell.
good practices on all fronts in terms of firearm use, but also storage and safety that I think we need to know more about and we need to be more familiar with.
Would you welcome the AG's office here in Utah doing more, further talking about school
Absolutely.
violence and
Yeah, absolutely.
suicides
We're
and-
seeing. I mean, these are terrible trends. I know that Utah's worked very hard. Representative Elison in the House has worked very hard on this issue. Utah has a Utah Safe app
Yeah.
where
Right.
young people can access that for counseling, for help, to reach out when in need. I know that there's been measurables and good things happening on that front, but this is a different era. To your point, Maura, that there's a lot going on with our young people and with safety in general. The more we can share good information, best practices, let everyone, youth as well as adults, be aware of some of the risks that are emerging that maybe didn't exist 10 years ago. We do have to do that. I don't want to compel anyone or force anything, but we should have this information as available as possible.
All right, you said sex. One of you did.
I
so
know.
we're gonna
I
talk
brought it up.
about
It was my analogy. I said it because I knew this was coming.
You
up,
knew it was
so.
coming. Okay, so this, I'm like, seriously, Utah, pull yourself together. STDs right now are the most common
I
disease
totally
in
reject
Utah.
this stat. You guys come up with stats on the show
This
that I
is-
just don't even accept
No, this is
anymore.
real, and
I think
I broke
more
news
than the
about
flu.
this a couple years ago.
Yes.
More than the flu. So
Nope.
2
I
STDs
don't
are
buy it.
topping the list for the most common diseases in Salt Lake County. The health department says the current approach to sex education is not working. Chlamydia and gonorrhea.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you where
More
this
than
is
the
coming
flu,
from.
Heidi. More than the flu.
More
than the flu.
reported. There is a lot of
How many people
STD
you know get the
action.
flu in the wintertime? Are you kidding me?
83%.
Okay, how many STDs do people show you?
83%
Come on.
of reported
I don't buy it.
infectious disease in Salt Lake County with kids between 15 and 17. 83% of 15 to 17-year-olds reporting are sexually
I
transmitted
almost
diseases.
brought up
83% of what?
Which is shocking because none of our
All our
children are
kids?
having sex.
Wait.
What?
You're telling me 83% of kids from 14 to
Reporting infectious diseases to the county.
The ones who are reporting
Don't-
their
Okay,
don't
disease.
so
get all
maybe you just don't report the
crazy.
flu. My point is there is no way. People get the flu all the time. You
My
cannot tell
point
me
is,
it's
as
as
long as our
frequent as
heads
that.
are in the sand and pretending that if we never speak of sex,
I've been
our children won't
every
have
week we
sex.
have a study that's blowing my
Okay,
mind.
but
I'm drawing the
I
line
will
on
blow
this
your
one,
line further.
right here.
This is
one
not
I do
just
not
this
accept.
is not just
I
teenagers.
will not even entertain the premise of this topic.
So I turned into the sex reporter here about 5 years ago. Luckily,
got
it was
kids,
a
okay?
short
I do
stint.
not buy this.
But there was a problem here, and I noticed the health department sending out some STD numbers, and I was like, what is going on? So I started doing some homework, and Tinder. That was the link. So we have all these grown-ups that used to be 7th and 8th graders in their classes with sex ed, and somehow they've lived monogamous Utah family-based lifestyle lives. And then somehow they realize that Tinder's out there and they could get a hookup with their neighbor down the street and their wife doesn't know or they've split up, but they never learned about condoms so they don't use them and they're spreading gonorrhea and chlamydia. It's a problem, Greg. It's happening in Draper.
You're shocked by all of this. And I think your representation of shock is why 83% of our children have an STD when they report
There's
it.
a saying, when you're in a hole, quit digging. I'm not going to say anymore other than if you used any other example, but the flu is very common.
I know.
People have
Now
the
just
flu
have to get
all
so
the
that
time.
to show you how common it is.
There's no way.
The data
There's no way.
that is generated from the county health department, no dog in the fight county health department, is telling us you may want to talk to your kids
Maybe it's
in
like
a systemic way
flu
about
that's so bad you think you have to
we
report
just
it?
coalesced around how much we should understand. Our children should understand how to use a
Yeah.
weapon. Maybe we should coalesce that they should understand how to use their bodies, Greg.
I'm
I
in the
don't know.
camp
It's
of-
a thing.
I need to get you more education that this
let's-
isn't the flu we're
so
talking
let's talk about
here. It can't
education
be.
because I just signed my 8th graders papers for listed off each of the fun things he's going to learn, and I signed away and I wanted to add on, could you please talk about this and this and this, but we're still teaching abstinence-based education, which is great, teaching kids to abstain from sex, but many of them are going to choose to have sex. So do we need to change the way we're educating kids at school, because many of them are going to choose to have sex, and teach them how to put a wrapper on it, how to stay safe,
So-
how to not make babies, how to not spread
So I was
chlamydia
in
around.
ninth
I don't
grade,
know.
Ninth grade.
This is going to
I
be a
had
good
sex
story.
ed.
Good story.
It was very. It felt more like biology.
They
than it
waited
did
till
anything
ninth
else.
grade.
Sex
And
is a lot like biology. I
But-
find that there's a relationship
Yeah, there is.
between
It's
biology.
It's an amazing correlation. But I never found anything salacious about the curriculum, even as a ninth grader that would try to,
Right.
make fun of everything. And they did even talk about contraception. You know what the big takeaway for me in ninth grade was? And maybe that is later in the curriculum. Was that condoms had like a 23 or 24% failure rate, and I thought if I got in a plane and it was like a 1 in 4 chance it was going down, why would I be talking about that as some
I
safe
think the failure
mode of
rate with
transportation?
condoms is not putting them on, isn't it?
I mean,
Like, do
so-
they really rip
but
open that
my
often?
point was there was a lot of stats, there was a lot of data, there was a lot of diagrams of how a baby's made, but I never saw anything about this is how you have fun. This is what you do when you want to be recreational. This is what you do here. This is what it was never done in a tone or in a vein of how to enjoy yourself. It was very clinical and very factual and very there was just a lot of data. It just
So
it
shouldn't we
wasn't
offer that
salacious.
to
So,
our
yeah.
students?
So
Shouldn't
I
we
have no
offer that
problem
to our
with that. If
kids?
it's done like that, I mean, it's just it's anatomy. It's information.
It is anatomy,
it's like-
but the problem is I remember distinctly in 7th grade, I had this paper this size, and it had a penis, and you had to label all the parts of it, and then there was I don't remember the girl getting to label it, but I remember labeling all the penis parts. But then after
This
that,
isn't.
it's
This
like, what do
segment's
you
not
do with
going
this
on the TV
information?
part. I don't think this is getting edited
It's
into
not.
the TV.
So,
it's Friday
so
night
should
or-
we? Are we
or
ready
Sunday
here in
morning.
Utah to
I don't think we're
finally,
doing that.
after we see all these STDs, say we need to teach more than
83% of our
abstinence?
15 to 17-year-olds who have a communicable disease
think
are
that's
ready.
another fake
I
news
will.
stat you're
we're
throwing out to
absolutely ready,
83%.
and we're
I'm
our
crying. I think it's
disconnect-
allergies, not this.
Our
gonna-
disconnect from where our kids are and what they're doing. Also, we've long had this hard time. Here's what I feel about morals and values with my children. I believe a couple things about them. They're mine to direct.
Yeah.
I also believe that if my kids can't exercise those without any opposition to it, I haven't done a really good job. If the notion is I'll under-inform them and they will only exercise their values as long as they're only with people who have their same values, then they're actually not instilled. I'm not saying you're saying
I get it.
anything in the post,
I'm
but
not ready to argue
absolutely
your point.
we have to start educating and preparing our kids factually, biologically, and then when it comes to fun or how we feel about sex, bring that back home, have that discussion with the
point.
parents.
That's Sunday dinner.
What I'm saying
Yeah,
is
that's
that
just
I
round
don't.
table
My
with the-
recollection
the
when I
Hughes
was a
household.
student was that there were no morals, advancing or advocating for or telling you no
So
about.
why have the Republicans in the state
curriculum.
legislature
It was
inserted
just
the morality into
information.
this?
It was just information, and it was
Former
how it
Speaker
works.
of the House,
They
why?
told when they told you about contraception, they didn't tell you that it's good or bad or whether it's fun to use or not to use or you shouldn't use. They just say
Here's the deal.
here are your odds. Here's how it actually works by way of
Right.
preventing pregnancy. Here's what it does to prevent STDs versus pregnancy, and they're not always the same. I mean, there's information that they would provide without any editorial tone about whether it was good or bad. It was just information.
So why have we been so slow?
So I
why
don't
is
get
the
it. I don't know.
legislature
That's
being so
fine. I got
slow?
no problem with that. That's fine. But I just think, when we debated this in the legislature, it really wasn't a debate about micromanaging the curriculum on the legislative level. It was, let's just let the districts and the school boards decide what they want to do, and we left it to them.
Greg
to do
Hughes,
it.
we just got done talking about it's fine to tell the school districts to talk about guns, and now you're like, I don't want to be a micromanager. Pick a lane.
concur.
Pick
No,
a lane.
I know. I'm not saying
just
I
need to
oppose
start
it. I'm
younger.
Saying, look, you
Start
asked if the
younger.
AG could do it.
Yeah.
AG can do it. If school boards are ready to do it, they can do it. I'm not. What I'm saying is, because the legislature didn't have a hand in what was going to be taught, I would
Right.
argue that the legislature is not going to create the gun safety curriculum either.
John
But what
Reyes
I'm
did.
saying is that those that can should, and we should. And as a lawmaker, I was not opposed to sex education. I don't think that you should be advocating to apply the
But we
information.
should be
I
educated.
just don't think you should.
Education is important. So what we've come down to right now is we're still not teaching kids about sex in schools. So
Are we
parents,
sure?
I don't know. I mean, maybe in the locker room, like the kids
No,
are talking
there's
about it.
sex ed classes.
My
We
son-
are not
There's sex ed
teaching.
classes.
No, Greg, read the statute as mandated by our friends
supposed
at
to
the
teach you
state
not to do it.
legislature. They're supposed to talk to you about abstinence. They're not supposed to talk to you. Here's something. My daughter goes to a Catholic school, and she is being more exposed to sex education than my child who has gone to public schools. That says something when the
look,
Catholics are more
If
progressive
they
with
say
you
that
about
abstinence
sex.
has a 100% success rate, I mean, you can throw that out there. It's a true stat. I mean, but you could put it in the stats with the other.
I know you don't mean to be that uneducated about it.
I'm saying abstinence can be a path. We don't have to be that cynical. We can't, can't even bring it up. You can.
And if
but
you guys
can.
need
Sure,
help,
make it the
sure.
primary.
we have some cool encyclopedias at my house that have really nice pictures in them, and they go everything from like an eyeball to a whale to how babies are made. And my son years ago was bringing this book around the neighborhood to people's houses. After we saw that, we were like, maybe we should let other families talk about it. But if you need that book, we have it at my house. There's
That's my
really
wife's
cool
job. She
pictures,
does.
That's a
great
nice
explanations.
author. That's
Yes,
good.
so the book is at my house and ready to go. Or there's the internet.
Are we on the next topic
Yeah,
yet?
we're going to
I
let
hate
you
this
have a
one.
topic that you're excited
Oh,
about.
hallelujah. It's a-
James Comey.
Yes.
So he's had an interesting
Liar,
week.
liar, pants on fire.
I saw him on Twitter yesterday asking the media to apologize to him. He's like, I won't demand that you apologize to me, but I ask that you do because you were
Only
wrong.
in America can you be the head chief law enforcement official of the United States of America, the FBI director,
Okay.
have 72 pages from, was it Michael Horowitz, who was an Obama appointee in the Office of Inspector General, spend 72 pages talking about how you fundamentally lied and misled people and misrepresented discussions and decisions in front of Congress, say that you're not going to go to jail for it, and have someone declare victory. I think it's a very sad day, and I'm going to take it even further than just this situation and this chaos with this President Trump and Russia and all the things that I think if you read that Inspector General report, if you look at what's inside those pages of that report, there is so much unilateral decision and gamesmanship that's going on with this FBI director that I think the ripple effect we're still suffering through as a country. But let's go before that. There was a time when the Attorney General of the United States had a meeting with former President Bill Clinton, and that meeting that was caught on a Arizona news film camera made it so that she could not make decisions in the Hillary Clinton email issue.
That meant the tarmac meeting?
Yes, the tarmac meeting. I go back there because I want everyone to drop their partisan preference of presidents, whether it's Democrat or Republican. I want to go back to during the Obama administration. The Attorney General,
when none of us were partisan.
She had to recuse herself, okay, from that investigation with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton because of this interaction.
Correct.
It had at least the appearance of a conflict. So that gave James Comey more discretion as the FBI director than he would typically have. Usually the Justice Department decides whether to proceed or not in a case. Not only did he get to make that decision himself as the FBI director, which isn't common, but then right before the eve of the election in November, told Congress and told America he was going to go ahead and reopen that case against Hillary Clinton with the email investigation and those unsecured emails. There are many on the Democrat side that would say that harmed Hillary Clinton's chances of becoming president. He unilaterally decided to do that. There was a lot of commentary that he didn't run that by channels in the Justice Department, that he was cavalier in what he had done, and that there was great impact, negative impact to those decisions. If you look at this Inspector General report in terms of the way he spoke to the President Trump when he was president-elect, all that he did, it mirrors the very behavior when he served under President Obama. And the takeaway here is this guy did not follow the rules. He was cavalier in his decisions. Whatever he thought was the case, he justified to the point where he didn't follow protocol or procedure, and it's wrong. And it's wrong and it's dangerous for this country, and I think so much of what we're going through in terms of deep state and conspiracies and everything, you can boil it down to this FBI director fundamentally misrepresenting information to Congress, holding documents he was supposed to give back, and it just goes on and on. He has not been a good player in any administration, and he has created damage to this country. I think that report, everyone wants to celebrate he's not going to jail. I think that's a very, very low bar for the director of the FBI.
I feel like that's the same bar we're holding the president to sometimes.
No, I don't actually. I think one of the things they were worried about.
Maura made a face.
I know, but look, one of the things is, did he fire James Comey? And was that obstruction of justice? That was one of the things that he's been taking a lot of criticism for. Now that you read this report, this man deserved to be fired for a while, not just under President Trump.
I haven't interrupted you because
you were letting him vent.
It is a truth bomb. We should hold people in high offices who directly lie to us accountable, and they should not be reelected. They should not be reappointed. They should not be considered to be trustworthy to the people. I think you're absolutely right about looking at best practices. I think you're absolutely right about unilateral decision making. I think you're absolutely right about not following standard protocols. I think you're absolutely right about not following change of command. Like, for example, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe if your national security advisors give you advice, maybe you consider their thoughtfulness in that. I think those criteria we should agree to hold all of our elected and appointed officials responsible to.
My retort, I know your implication
Greg.
here. I would tell you that the criticisms or the inferences you're making are within the job of being president that you might not agree with, but I don't believe he has lied. I don't believe he is. I believe what he is.
Don't tell me that Donald Trump has not lied. He even knows he's lied.
This is the largest
what we like
investigation
to
that's
do.
ever
I'm not
taken
talking
place,
about Russia. I'm talking about
there was
Wednesday
no merit to
morning
these
Donald
things.
Trump.
There's
I'm
no
not even
merit to
bringing
those
Melania
things.
into it. I'm just saying Donald Trump lies.
No,
it's
not the same. Look, James Comey's associates, those that were around him, were shocked to find out that he lied to them.
I'm not
They
defending
came, when he
Comey.
was leaving you're supposed to turn over everything.
Amen.
He said he did. He was hiding things. He was lying to the very people he worked with.
I absolutely am a believer that he messed up Hillary Clinton's campaign. That was a game changer 10 days out for her. Absolutely, he was beyond scope. I'm just saying, as you always tell me, you can't have different rationales.
You can disagree
Your
with what the president's done,
mantra
but
is
it's
you
not
can't
this
have
Comey
different
level.
rationales, my friends.
He's not acted the way Comey
I'm
has.
gonna miss you two together.
He said,
getting all
getting
passionate.
getting too granular on
We
this
hate
one.
Comey with
But
you.
there is a scene I watched last night where they asked him, they said, when you went to Trump Tower when there was the transition and President Trump was president-elect, you went to the president and said, there's a story that's probably going to come out in the media and it's unverified and we don't believe it's the case, and it's about your allegations of your conduct in Moscow.
Right.
He said, we're not investigating you. That's not going to be an issue. It turns out in this report that he was, in fact, that was a meeting he had to see what the president's reaction would be. He left Trump Tower and had a meeting with this Crossfire Hurricane investigation about Donald Trump to talk about what his reaction was to the information he was sharing with him, which meant he was in a full-fledged investigation of this man, which he was misrepresenting and misrepresented to Congress. But what was even scarier is when he testified in Congress, he said, I had that private conversation because I didn't want the president to feel that it was like a gotcha moment or I would leverage it. Every word that he said was untrue in a very duplicitous way.
I agree.
And when you read
and
that,
after William
doesn't
Barr
that
has his
scare
family
you?
reunion at a Trump hotel, we should just drain the swamp.
Hey,
and
look,
throw
but
them
you know
all
what?
out.
You
Just
can't
gonna
say
wrap
that
that
William
up
Barr
for
is
you.
Get 'em all
in the
done.
pocket of President Trump when he's not pursuing crime. I mean, I think Comey's the guy that went after Martha Stewart.
Yeah.
He put her in jail.
Your
Did she
ace in the
serve in
hole
a,
is
a,
ending
a
with
country
Martha.
club jail? But he went after her because she wasn't
Yeah.
truthful. To a man that we just read 72 pages from an inspector general saying he was untruthful all the time to his colleagues, to the people he worked with, to the president of the United States. It's a very
Agreed.
disturbing
I won't
report.
defend
It's a
Comey.
very disturbing
No more
report.
writing books, Mr. Comey. No
No.
more showing up
Please,
on the
just
late
go
night
away.
shows.
Go away.
Enough carnage already.
Clean up,
Just go
everybody.
away.
Seriously, we need like a big bar of soap in Washington. Clean it up. All right, we had so many other topics, but we've talked about
Trump's
so
trying to clean
much Comey and sex today that we ran out of time. But Trump's using FEMA funds for ICE courts and immigration jails. We'll have to get to that later. And
I
the
have a rant about
2020
that.
race
I have a
is getting
longer
smaller.
rant about that.
You do?
I do.
Okay, we are like
We're $1 trillion
I'm giving
over
you
debt.
each.
Now we got all these.
Okay, I'm giving you
Democrat
each
budget
60
hawks worried
seconds
about
because
it.
I
Because
love this.
Trump created a crisis at the border based on racism
No.
and
You have more people trying to get
hyping
over
up that there's
declaring asylum than
caravans.
ever before.
He's created a problem.
No.
Don't tell me Obama also switched funds because it was totally different. So
Nope.
don't even go down that
Nope.
road. I'm telling you,
have people trying to
created
abuse the
crisis.
asylum law.
Now we are headed into the season of natural disasters. We have ICE agents that are not rounding up highest and worst criminals, but in fact arresting people because
Those
they're
resources
brown.
are on the border because they're being flooded by these
Right.
asylum
Because
people declaring
Trump
asylum.
has created a
which
problem
everyone
by
said
his
we
racism.
can't detain them in this inhumane way. We're putting resources to do this the best way we
We're
can.
not going after
and then
criminals.
people
We're
get mad
going
about
after
that.
families.
We need
No,
a
we're not.
nuclear weapon
We're
to end these
adjudicating
hurricanes.
the asylum cases, but we're not saying go back and come back someday for
Well,
your
then
court
why don't
case,
you do it
'cause they
on
weren't
time
showing
and on
up.
budget and stop taking
Congress needs to
disaster
allocate money for
relief
that effort so he
money.
doesn't have to, in
Yeah,
a $1 trillion
it's
deficit,
hard
take
to
from one
fund
place
systemic
to go to another.
racism. It requires resources.
Oh, I wish we had
It's
another
just-
30 minutes for this.
He's adjudicating these asylum cases. That's what you want. That's what everybody was complaining, that the way he was trying to do that wasn't working. It was inhumane. Put more resources to do it the right way.
And that's what ICE does, is adjudicating asylum claims. Am I confused about what ICE
Some of
does?
the money is going to ICE and
155 million
some
of
is
that
going
went
to the courts.
Went to the court.
Yeah.
155
I
of the
know.
200 million
The
went to the
question,
courts.
of course. Right.
ICE is to make sure that
And
it's
I'm
all
for
working.
the courts. I'm for actually funding.
Thank you. You
I-
agree
I
with me
am.
wholly.
Well, the
Thank
good
you so
news
much.
right now is the latest European model has hurricane. I almost said hurricane because we live in Utah. That drives me nuts. Dorian maybe getting away from Florida, so maybe he'll have the cash to use if we don't get any more.
FEMA director said
Yeah.
they have the resources necessary to handle this, which was a big question.
They
All
did because
right.
they're responsible.
Yes.
Responsibility is good.
It's a good administration.
Thank
that
you,
way.
Mara, for hanging out with us. Greg,
welcome.
thank you so much. I feel
you.
like we could just hang out for hours and squabble with
can
each
keep
other.
going.
I like
We
this
can.
conversation.
We can.
Thanks so much for listening. Tell your friends to listen, subscribe, and Mara will be back because
Happy-
Jim is going to need some breaks.
Yes, he will. Happy Labor Day weekend.
Absolutely.
Labor Day.